quick question, how many customers of Austin Energy do we have in the room? Thank you, thank you, awesome. So I'm gonna do a quick poll. How many people are in the energy business, whether electricity or energy of some sort? Great. How many educational people do we have in here? Anyone retired? Any other general categories? Private industry. All right, and last hand is, I do see some familiar faces in here. Anyone here see me chat before? Any repeat customers? A few. Oh, look on the front row. So that should tell you people in the back row that this is going to be fun. We'll see. I have some new stuff I want to talk to you about. So we're gonna have some completely new topics, and I'll have some update on the old hits, if you will, and kind of what we're doing. I also do want to welcome you to our headquarters. This headquarters building is a LEED Platinum Green Building 5-star facility. And we're going to even talk a little bit about green building and how that can be part of your strategy on resiliency and reliability. So we definitely walk the walk when it comes to the programs we pitch. All right. In 1 second. All right. Thank you, sir. It's full. It's full. Oh, you're manually doing the space. Oh, you did the space bar, Jay? Now you tell me this? That's what we call, folks, is trolling. You know something doesn't work and you just want them to figure it out in front of an audience. Thank you. Marcus, do we have or Bobby, do we have a remote that works by any chance? You know, this is our IT person, Marcus, by the way. He's gonna take this and it's just gonna work for him. I don't know if that's how that works for y'all. Great, thank you. All right, oh, you know what? That is a good colleague. Look at him backing me up here. All right, and I'm happy to go to the space bar if this gets a little finicky. It does seem to be acting a little finicky with me. Just seems really slow. All right, before we talk about the future, what's step number 1? Who said that? Yeah, you talk about the present. So we're gonna do a real quick one-on-one on the present state of the electric grid. So this is just how electricity traditionally, and worked for over 100 years. You have generation, you ramp up the energy into your transmission lines, and then you start ramping it back down when you start distributing it to the home. And just a unique thing to kind of keep in mind is this is in perfect balance. So 60 hertz. Every time you turn on a light at your home, there's something spinning. It could be 100 miles away spinning to go ahead and power that light you just turned on. And if it starts getting out of wonk, either one side of the balance or other. So that's kind of a really important concept to know about the electric grid, that it is just-in-time delivery, because that's part of the opportunities and the challenges as we move into the future state. I think it's also important to point out is Texas. Anything look a little unique about the electric grid of North America? Yeah, we're a little island. So the US has 3 major grids, Eastern Grid, West, and then Texas, or ERCOT. So we do act like a little island. So once again, that's threats and opportunities on the topics we're going to talk about the future state. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. This is the thank you for the sponsor, Austin Energy. So everyone who raised their hand, thank you for being a customer. We've been doing this as an organization since 1895. We're the 3rd largest city-owned utility. Very aggressive carbon-free goals to include, in a matter of a few years, 86% of Austin Energy's electricity will be carbon-free. So we're already over 50% now. And then we have a pathway to get to 100%. So that's just your community utility in action. I'm a city employee. All our revenues go back into the general fund, back into the city of Austin to help pay for roads, fire, police, parks, generally to tune a little over 100 million a year gets back into the city of Austin by the fact that you all own the utility. It's not an investor-owned utility. It doesn't go back to whoever invested in it. You by default, by being a customer, also own it. And I do want to thank my awesome team. If you're a member of this team, could you go and stand up right now and just be recognized? Yes, yes. You are? Amy, yes? Or anyone from Austin Energy? Anyone else hiding, lurking? So I'm going to talk about some specific programs and what we're doing. Uh, Everything I talk about is the work of the people you see here. I'm just the one talking to you about it, but it's just an amazing team. And also we have to wear a lot of hats. We need a band. Well, someone better play guitar and better play in the band. We need models for literature. Well, several of those on the board there, you just get your city employees to do it. So we really, I'm just so grateful to be able to work with such an awesome team. All right, now we're going to kind of get into the themes of the evening, if you will. So I'm calling this the future of electricity bow tie. You know I'm calling it a bow tie? It kind of looks like a bow tie. I could have drawn any shapes I wanted to, but yeah, why not do a bow tie? So to look at the future, we have to look at, now that we've talked about baseline, we have to talk about what's the big growth drivers. What's just driving just demand for more and more and more electrons. And so we're going to talk about three things: population growth, cryptocurrency mining, and transportation electrification. There's a little quiz at the end, and there may or may not be a prize associated with the quiz. And then what are our desired outcomes on the right? So reliability and resiliency, climate action and clean air, energy security and affordability. So we want to manage this growth through innovation. And the three biggest trends I see moving forward can really be categorized by a lot of innovation and solid engineering in decarbonization, production of energy without associated carbon, decentralization, so moving away from that one power plant way over here, and then the customer way over here. So things like microgrids, distributed energy resources, and then automation to enable it. So AI, blockchain, predictive analysis, new technologies and controls. And I know Austin Forum does a great job of kind of bringing in a specific title, so we'll talk a little bit about those technologies, but those are enabling technologies that are helping us drive the outcomes we want on the right. All right, so we're in the quiz time. We're going to talk about the three big drivers, and I'm going to ask you, the audience, which one's the biggest driver for the next 12 months, next 12 to 18 months? Population. All right, so hypothesis number one, population. Austin remains nation's fastest growing major metro. According to the US Census Bureau in 2021, about 116 net new residents moved to Austin Metro a day. So what does that look like from an energy perspective? So roughly 2.6 people per home is a national average. So that's 45 new homes a day that need to be built. I actually counted, that's what 45 homes looks like on the left. Every day. So just today, between the time you got up and had a taco, that infrastructure needed to be built if we were going to have a levelized system of growth. So now we're seeing the pressures on why it's getting so expensive here, because we're not building that every single day. Also, that's about 100 vehicles. We almost have a 1-to-1 ratio to number of people in the counties here in Austin versus registered vehicles to population. That's kind of where we're at as a society. So that on the right is, I counted, is 100 vehicles. Every single day, that many of my vehicles come to, and to be clear, it's just not the 2 lanes here. That's 70. You have to pick up another 25 over here to get you your 100 every single day. This is what's coming onto your streets. So there's a lot of ways we're not going to build roads out of this type of growth, but it's also a big impact on energy. All right, so hypothesis number 2 of the big growth driver, cryptocurrency mining. Anyone who here owns crypto? I know we have some experts in crypto. All right. You're not going to like me by the end of this presentation, or you're going to have some good counterpoints and you're going to like me less. All right. So let's talk about Bitcoin mining, because it is the largest, most predominant cryptocurrency. It's a little over 30%. So it's about $989 billion is a cryptocurrency market. Bitcoin is about 380 or so billion. So that's just kind of give you the numbers. So what is Bitcoin mining? I kind of want to demystify it a little bit. When you look at Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, you go to Google and look at the images, they show coins, like a physical coin, and mining, Like you're in there and you're digging, digging. I mean, there's some good, strong, just powerful. Yeah, we're mining and we're mining gold. But really, you're doing a spreadsheet. What it is, the process of mining is having a very specialized computer that is very good at rapidly guessing an answer. It's rolling dice. And the faster it can roll dice is the faster it's going to get it correct. So it's solving what they call a math problem. And when the problem is solved, a Bitcoin is deemed mined. And then in your portfolio on the right, you went from 218 Bitcoin and now 219. You've just mined a Bitcoin. So computational heavy. All right, growth mode number 3. EVs. Who here owns an EV? That's a lot. I've been doing this road show now for 11 years. I'm the co-founder of Austin Energy Electric Vehicles Emerging Technologies team. And when I used to ask that question 11 years, only one person in the audience raised their hand. He's right here, Del Beulah. He is the only one who'd raise his hand. None of the rest of y'all would raise your hand. And I can guarantee you no one's owned an EV longer than this guy here in Austin. I'm pretty confident. Ooh, we might have one. We might have one. We have someone that's pretty close to you, Del. We'll see. But now it's just more normal. I mean, people know what the technology, and if you don't own one, you might be thinking about it. You might know someone who has one. You've probably ridden in one. So you probably have at least had some exposure. That not many years ago, that just was not the case. So I saw the industry going from what is that to include when I took this job, that the team's not going to be there for 12 months. Why even go in there? To, well, maybe, to then, yes. And now it's really about how quickly and what are we going to do about it? How are we going to reap the opportunities and manage the risks? Are you recording? Are you taking a photo or? Oh, okay, great. We have one of our esteemed professors here as well, so he's going to fact check me the whole way through. So obviously strong growth here in Austin. We're having a lot, so Tesla Gigafactory. So I was reading a report, the national increase in EV jobs rose 26% nationally. What do you think the rise in EV jobs been last year in Austin? Yeah, I think John's right. 15,000%. That feels right. I mean, you got a gigafactory here. How many jobs did that bring to Austin? So a lot of EV stuff going on here, and to put some numbers on it, Travis County has the most EVs out of any county in Texas. So great growth here, great market share. So in Texas, over 140,000 EVs on the road. All right, so it's question time. So out of those 3 choices, let you think about it. What is the biggest source of new demand for Texas electricity? So for those who say, I'm going to start from the bottom, EVs. EVs is going to be pushing demand in Texas for the next 12 months. Raise your hand. And I'm also keeping track of anyone who doesn't. All right, those are my non-committals. Cryptocurrency mining. Ooh. All right. All that population moving to Texas. All right. I think you voted twice, sir. I'm telling you, I am calculating. I am calculating. I do see everyone's hands, and you're right in front. I see you. I see you double voting. Stop the steal. This is it. Spreadsheet additions is the #1 growth trend in Texas today. Putting spreadsheets to get your Bitcoin. Nothing is beating it. Nothing's beating it. That's what a mining looks like. It's really cool. Notice we're wearing puffy jackets. Banks, am I too high or too low? Right here? Is that good? Is this on? Does that sound better? We'll give it a try. All right. Does that sound all right, or is that? Now this is, all right, I'm turning this back on. All right, this is also what happens when you don't come early to test audio or overall test anything. All right, we have our audio guys out there tweaking it. So I'm gonna try to hold it pretty steady right here. So this is what is sucking all the juice, or the majority of the new growth is a wall, and it's very chip heavy. You ever heard shortage of chips going on? Guess where a lot of the chips are going? I mean, how many chips would you count in that wall there? Look at those power lines going to those banks and those cooling systems. Let's talk numbers. Well, how much big? All right, so reporting is crypto miners Texas using as much energy as the city of Houston in a matter of months in Texas. So 1.5 gigawatts now. Put in perspective, Austin's probably a 3 gigawatt town, 3.2, give or take. 7.5 in 2023. So whether you see it or not, the energy draw of Houston is being built not in front of your eyes, behind your eyes. And then there's also reporting that ERCOT in the pipeline has 17 additional gigawatts of people, data mining companies interested in coming to Texas. And the quote from, at that time, the interim ERCOT CEO was 17 gigawatt is about the equivalent of 2.5 New York cities. Now, I don't think you need to be a power system engineer, but when you start rating your new load in cities or New York cities, that is ridiculous. That is a lot of energy. 2.5 New York cities coming to Texas behind walls that really look nondescript on the outside, but inside you have all that power draw. And also, I had let's see if I can go back arrow. And it's only getting worse because the way the crypto mining works, they're going to get less and less as they move forward and forward as the Bitcoin gets more and more rare. So it's getting worse. Every 4 years, it doubles in energy for the same amount of Bitcoin. That's just kind of the way that mining works. All right, so this group is called what? The Austin Forum on what? Technology and society. So I want to talk a little bit about the society aspect, if we could. So what are some people saying about societal value? You know, one of the most well-known investors, wealthiest investors in North America, Warren Buffett, has said it doesn't produce anything. Never has an industry needed so much and given so little back to society. Warren Buffett said he would not buy the entire cryptocurrency market, currently valued at $989 billion, for $25. And why he said that is because then I would have to sell it to you. And there's no value in that. I mean, if you look at what he invests in, Coca-Cola, he invests a lot in Apple, Dairy Queen, Bank of America. He understands those companies. And he has a pretty diverse portfolio. But he understands how the numbers work and he was notoriously not an investor in the .com bit. He just didn't understand it. He hunkered down with the companies he knew who were giving value back to the customers. Ultimately, they were being undervalued because he knew what their value to society and customers were and what the market price, and that's when he gobbled that up and then it would rise. But he just doesn't understand, and he wouldn't buy the whole thing for 25 bucks. So Bill Gates refers to it as the greater fool theory. So as long as I can find a sucker that's willing to pay more than me, then I've won. So I've now passed it to you. And now you're holding that, that reward and risk. He also talked about NFTs as well. And he's already called on NFTs. NFTs, both in volume and in value, are down 93% from in the last 6 months. So NFTs is a blockchain technology where you're buying and selling artwork that you are saying I digitally own, but not really. And I think then it kind of bottomed out, and now we're already seeing that. We'll see if he's right about cryptocurrency as well. I don't know. Two different things, but you know, who's this quote? Why not talk about it? So what are countries doing based on the societal value? China notoriously banned crypto mining back in June of 2021. And so now you have these heavy hitters in industries, they needed to find a home. China was about 70 to 80% of crypto mining in the world. That was just the hub. And they realized that we don't see the societal value. We also want to address the climate impact. They're also not a fan of these unmoderated currencies floating around. You know, what is that really enabling, et cetera. So then other countries have kind of started joining that. Quebec, what they did, their utility said, okay, you can come here and we have cheap electricity. We have a lot of hydropower, so that's good. But we don't want you to then raise the prices for our traditional customers. So we're going to charge you double. So you're subsidizing our customers, and that can be your societal value. That's how they're dealing with it. It's just charging you a little premium to go ahead and use that extra hydro. What do you think we're doing here in Texas? And that's when the audience got hostile. I can just feel the tone. So we're going to take a little musical break. Amy, can you please bring the band? All right, what's Texas doing? So one is Bitcoin miners themselves are very proud of the fact and have done great press releases on their helping fix the broken Texas electric grid, and they have powerful political allies that agree. Recently, it was reported in his filing that also, and he walks the talk, he's invested $50,000 of his own money in Bitcoin. So very transparent, that's how politicians work. He's walking the talk. We are not only pushing them away, we are paying them to come through big, big subsidies. To the tune of, during the recent summer, one mining operation, it was a big one, got 9.2 million in the month. More than they got with crypto. The crypto was only about 3 to 4 million. So it's like that rang the dinner bell globally to the world. Not only is electricity cheap out of the gate, because they pay wholesale marketing. They don't pay like the customer assistance, all the line items you have in your bill, the customer assistant line items, the benefits charge, the pass through, all that stuff, that's not on their bill. They're wholesale customers. So they're paying pennies on the dollar, but they also have worked in a system that is traditionally around manufacturing plants where electricity is only just a small part. Hey, can you just shut down? We know that there's an expense there and we need this cement concrete mixing plant or whatever. And since you have all these employees not working, you're not generating, here's kind of how the system works. But the fact that their variable is so tied to energy, it's just a windfall. So that's why you're seeing the two New York cities coming and saying, hey, how can we get on this gravy train? And ultimately, who do you think pays that $9.2 million? Yeah. Yeah, so take the finger, look for someone who pays it, and then do this, and do that. That's who pays it, eventually. Whether it goes through ERCOT as an ERCOT transmission or a pass-through charge back to you, that's a line item in your bill, or some other mechanism. That's how it works. There's no such thing as free money. All right, what's the argument against Texas' approach? So here is a recent letter, just a couple weeks ago. 7 members of the US Congress, Senate and Congress, who basically in their memo to the brand new CEO of ERCOT, stated this. I just kind of pulled the quote out. So it's not like this is not a known issue or a potential opportunity for some policy or oversight adjustments for cryptocurrency miners. But, you know, how much faith do you have in your political system here to kind of move that versus a federal congressional letter signed off by Democrats? So now we're getting political. So now I'm telling you which side to take. The fact that Democrats signed this and Ted Cruz is saying this, I've just by default told you what side to pick if you identify with a specific side, which most Americans unfortunately do. But I think it goes well beyond it just kind of moves into hopefully common sense and not necessarily a tribal thing of R's versus D's. And not universal, but you know, it's always a risk. All right, let's talk about a more fun topic. I told you we weren't going to like this talk, especially the people who came repeat. Normally I'm not like I'll tell you this, for the people who've seen me, I'm going to end on an optimistic note, all right? But it is Halloween, we can start with it. Let's just get this out of the way, and then we'll talk about what is actually happening now to kind of address some of the concerns we're talking about. All right, remember this? See that little struggling? I don't know what that's supposed to be. Is that supposed to be an electron, I guess? Or a tooth? A tooth riding a bike? All right, so what happens when that just goes higher and higher and our little tooth electron, toothaton is struggling? What happens? That's what happens. So the former ERCOT CEO, when he reported back to the legislature, said we were 4 minutes and 37 seconds away from a catastrophic blackout. Who here was affected by the storm? Had an outage or no? Who was affected by Storm Uri? And keep your hand raised if you think it was catastrophic to you. Yeah. So what does catastrophic mean to him? That was catastrophic. That's correct. That's exactly correct, sir. Catastrophic to him mean we would have gone into a black start. So instead of talking about your power coming up in hours or days, weeks and months. If we were 4 minutes and 17 seconds away from being weeks and months before all Texans got their power back. That's what a black start is. Black start is everything goes cold. And then you go through this whole prolonged process. This one generation, you get this little area going. 4 minutes away. Yeah, 100%. All right, so what did the legislature fix it? Oh, come on. Hey, I have someone who's going to prove you wrong. I am just reporting verbatim what is publicly being put out there by our top executive in Texas government. In his mind, or at least in his public broadcasting, does someone want to read this for me? I guess I have the mic after read it. Just in case we have some people with poor eyesight in the back. Everything that needed to be done was done to fix the power grid in Texas. Tweeted June 8, 2021. Done. So this concludes the presentation on the Austin Forum. I want to thank you. Now we're going to talk about it. All right. You know what, John? You know what I appreciate about you, John? I promise, John is not a mole. John is, we're going to talk about what FERC just said. That's on my next slide. So thank you, John. But I also want to talk a little bit about there's more to be done. So Congressman Chris Patty, Republican, since we're naming tribes, was the chairman of the House State Affairs Committee that pushed Senate Bill 3 and 4, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. Look at my notes. Through to was the legislation our governor was talking about that fixed the power grid. And he even said there's more to be done. There is a very good, interesting open letter blog post from 5 former public utility commissioners. You know what's the best way to get insights on someone? After they've left the organization, right? Like the exit interview. I love exit interviews. Oh, that's when they unload. Well, this is the exit interview of your former top leaders at the Public Utility Commission who just really have insight, some very, very smart people. So there is the commissioners listed here. You can easily find it. They had 20 recommendations that they recommend on their way out. Hey guys, we know what's going on. Let's fix them. So some of the things, so really what the legislation does is 2 things when he said it fixed the grid. One is it changes the board of ERCOT. It shrinks a little bit from 16 to 11. One of the recommendations from the PUC commissioners was take the politics out of who you appoint and have a professional board. And that was part, because they could feel the political pressure just from them having that job. So what do you think Senate Bill 3 did? Did it take the politics out? Yeah, so previously you had a committee and group of experts that would pick the commission. Now you have the top three elected officials, the governor, lieutenant governor, and one other top spots that they pick the committee, then that picks, and now only 11. So if anything, in my opinion, it probably went against the grain. It probably got more political rather than having more voices. It was about the appointees of the governor and the lieutenant governor. Weatherization of a larger pool of natural gas plants. There's one of the language had good language about weatherization, the plants and the transmission line. So that's a good thing. But part of the critics are the gas infrastructure, which accounted for a lot of the outage because the gas couldn't get delivered, was kind of left out of that. So they really don't have to weatherize, and they arguably made potentially the most revenue during the outage. Also, some of the Democrats who were trying to put language on the bill, there was really no fines for poor compliance. And that was another recommendation of the commissioners, is put some teeth into it so ERCOT can do their job in teeth. And the argument is it's more of an inconvenience than really changing behavior is how that is on. Also, one of the other recommendations is buildings to be more energy efficient. So, when I stated we are in a LEED Platinum, Green Star 5-star rated building. All right, we're going to put that on loop. And we have a great program, Green Building, who rates and consults and works with builders and designers and developers for residential and commercial buildings to make them more energy efficient and more sustainable. And it's a great group. I had the honor, I just came off a 2-month rotation as the manager of the Green Building and Sustainability team. Lovely, lovely people. So if you're a builder, designer, or just want to get your own home rated, I recommend you go to the program, and one of our lovely staff would love to work with you on how to get your rating there and kind of walk you through and how it works. There's my plug for Green Building. Dell Children's, another Green Platinum, even has on-site generation, very, very resilient. Here is one of the case studies from a residential house that has a Green Building rating. Of course, you can see the HQ building there. All right, so John is my plant. So he said, well, what did FERC say? So FERC is the national oversight, if you will, of the electric grid. So what is their acronym? Federal Energy Regulation Commission. So kind of good news. Marginally better, folks. Marginally better. You could have said marginally worse. This is the winter readiness report, and this was just a week or so ago. This is hot off the press, folks. We're still vulnerable to extreme winter weather. So as long as we don't have extreme winter weather, we're good. So hang in there. Hang in there. All right, so we did our own self-reflection. What did Austin Energy learn from the storm? How can we do better? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? My full-time job during the storm wasn't anything to do with EVs. I was on incident command, deputy chief of logistics. So what does that mean? I make sure our field crews have coffee and propane delivered to the stations and a cot or a bed. So that was my job. Plenty of people on my team. I had members of my team making hotel reservations, the one that were available. I had another member of our team putting propane in his truck and driving it to substations for the crew. So it was all hands on deck. Everyone just kind of dropped their full-time job. We weren't really talking about necessarily the Austin Forum during that time. But so we agree with the congressman who kind of pushed the bill through. There's a lot to be done. So we made 19 observations on 112 action items, and this is publicly available. You can look and a real-time report of what's been done, what's still outlying. We want to be very transparent. But I'm going to kind of summarize what worked well and then things we need to do for follow-up. So here's what our AAR introspective, what worked well. One is the technology worked very well to shed the load. When ERCOT made a demand of, hey, Austin Energy, we need you to shed this and shed this ASAP, shed this ASAP, the technology was very responsive to, and ultimately it was that technology that avoided that 4 minutes and 17-second catastrophic, is the bill to just shed until you just had a bare minimum. Sustaining power on the customer in the critical load list. So if you were on next to a hospital or some other identified critical load, those did stay on. So it could have gotten worse. We could have started seeing the critical load, hospitals and other areas that have registered as critical load, those did stay up. Our power generation units performed above market. What does above market mean? Above market is we produced more power with our generation fleet than we consumed as our customers. So we were actually enhancing the grid stability and had excess energy that was sold on the market. So what does that mean after the fact? After the fact, we were able to shield by having that higher performing generation fleet, shield us from having to pay exorbitant prices and be held hostage during people who had to buy energy because their own fleet wasn't performing. Put in perspective, CPS is working on a lawsuit, and they're also a gas utility, so they buy a lot of natural gas, but also expensive electricity. $1 billion is what they're trying to figure out of how our ratepayers, our San Antonio, if we're not successful in these lawsuits, going to pay for that $1 billion. Well, we were the opposite. We were on the flip side because our generation fleet already been weatherized. We just have fantastic crews and staff that just were generating more than we needed. So that was good. We can always do better, but that's good. Some good work in the energy market. Our transmission line substations, the recovery and uptime there. Oh, incident command structure. Hey, I was on that. Basically, to me, that meant a call every 3 hours, I believe. Our remote workforce technology is working good, so our IT, we were able to stay connected. So follow-up. Number one, ERCOT market design discussions and regulatory changes. We know there's a lot of work to be done there. And in my opinion, still probably needs work to be done. We need to do a better job with communicating to our customers and how our outage map was being utilized as a technology. Really revamping, make sure we're being as proactive as possible in vegetative management, the limbs that break. Increased coordination, develop method of reducing, and then increased coordination with the city department. So you can look at the all line, but that's just kind of the introspective of what we're working on to improve and the over 100 action items we gave to ourselves. All right, we're going to change and talk a little bit more about the positive. We're going to end on the positive note. All right, so we're still on track. We're still on track to be 100% carbon free as a utility. Thanks, John. And we're not slowing down. So by 2025, that's just right around the corner, we'll be at 86% is what we project, 93% by 2030, and again, squeezing out that last 7%. It's going to take 5 more years. So that's good news. Who all here has heard about this community in Florida? Raise your hand. So that represents 1/10 of the people who sent me this as an email telling me about this article. All right, so there's one Florida community, highly rated, Backpack Ranch, in the eye of the storm. Their biggest complaint is, I think a tree went down and a stop sign. No building, no outages, no nothing. And so what can we learn from that? So is this what a future community looks like? Is this what a resilient community? So one, it was inland to avoid the coastal surges, all underground lines, kind of like our downtown network is. Big retaining ponds and on-site generation run by their local utility. So very interesting case study. I think we can learn a lot about that. It's just a future home. Now, I've been in my job on a few photo shoots before, and they can be kind of awkward. This looks like the most stilted, awkward, and oh, you can't see. So you have this guy squatting, they have like limbs down there, And you have, I guess what's supposed to be his wife back there. She's picking, you can tell they just hosed it down. The background was done in post. It was a sunny day, by the way. And then they have the Ford F-150 Lightning. But this is Ford marketing the number one vehicle in the U.S. Not the number one truck. Number one vehicle in the U.S. is power your home during a storm. If you go to the Ford F-150 website, this is the number one feature. Horsepower, towing, all that stuff. That is number one. That's down the line. But if you go, number two is be a power generator for your work site. So they're going all in on the generation of power. And these are huge batteries. Like that truck in the park in there is about the equivalent of 13 Tesla Powerwalls, but it's on wheels. It's also much cheaper than 13 Tesla Powerwalls, and it has wheels. So is this what the future home is going to look like? So this is basically putting a microgrid in your home. And who's my time checker? Jay, how are we doing? Oh, perfect. Perfect. All right. So let's talk about EVs for a bit. And that's something near to my heart. Obviously, if you came early, you got a shot, electric greater than gas. That's us talking about EVs, by the way. You want to tell me the benefit, whether you're just a driver or enthusiast, what's the benefit of transportation electrification? You want to give me one? Yes, sir. Distributed storage. Distributed storage helps with outages, helps with increased penetration of renewable energy, helps with a lot of things. And now give storage. Yes. Transition fossil fuels. And why is that good? Why do we want to transition fossil fuels? Thank you, Olivia. Aw.
For the environment.
Climate. All right, climate action, clean air. Olivia, let's just go down the line here. Oh, I'd like, and then I'm going to make this awkward, sure. Yeah. All right, yes, sir.
Electric vehicles will be much cheaper to manufacture than gas vehicles simply because of the component count. Once the market gets down the learning curve, it's going to be much cheaper to buy an electric vehicle than a gas-powered vehicle.
Affordability. We're starting to see reporting on sub 10,000 new, like already being produced in China. Our fleet services are already showing a total cost of ownership today. About every EV they bring into our fleet saves them over 10 years, $10,000 per EV. So we're on track right now to save $3.5 million ahead of schedule for the city by our own transition. So affordability. And I did put the Ford F-150 Lightning. Might have had, there was one of our fleet Ford F-150 Lightnings in the underpass right here. You might have seen it when you're coming in. And it's almost more impressive that maybe you didn't notice. It just looks like a regular work truck doing a thing, but it's 100% electric. Yes, in the front.
My 44-mile-per-gallon Mercedes used to cost $80. I put in 1 to 3 month. It's up to $240. My electricity cost me $30, and my EV is
Wide EV, $240 of gas versus what a month? Versus 30. No, he dropped my Mercedes. Ladies. Yeah. Anyone else? Dell, sir, of course.
Maintenance. The only real maintenance is tire rotation.
Only real maintenance is tire rotation. Anyone in the back seat? Anyone else? Yes.
It will help solve final mile and logistic delivery concerns. Much cleaner.
Final mile, first, last mile, and logistics. Yes. Yes.
How much does it cost to replace a battery when they need to be replaced?
How much does it cost to replace a battery? Do we have any EV drivers? No. How? Wait, raise your hand if you own an EV. Keep your hand raised if you had to replace the EV battery pack, and then we'll ask you. Anyone had to replace? All right. How much, sir? Tell us your story. You had an EV battery pack and how much it cost. And first, I want to point out, it's kind of rare. There's 200, 300,000 miles. It's almost, well, how much it costs to replace your transmission, whatnot. That's a much more common question. It is hard for me to find that because for most people, it just is not a thing. But it's fair. As a utility, we like those batteries coming on for second use because they might not have the density for the EVs. But that's another kind of strategy on that.
They're too new, but I gotta believe
audience that said they
$21,750 for a Tesla Model S. $21,700.
$21,750 for Tesla Model S.
Well, it's not by miles. That's the problem, right? It's a different thing. And I mean, to replace your engine in a gas car is under $5,000. So the real problem, I think, is going to be they're so new. I'm a huge fan of EVs. I'm an electrical engineer. I just hate batteries, right? And I really worry about these cars being basically just throwaway when they're done because people aren't going to replace the batteries. They're going to go straight to a junkyard.
Yeah, and so
You'll have no resale.
that'd be good Q&A because, we should talk about Second Life or some of the, like the former CTO of Tesla, his company is all about recycling batteries. That's doing to scale right now. So there's a lot of smart companies and interesting value propositions on the whether it's the precious metals or the Second Life batteries. I'm going to move that because you know what? I want to get you the Q&A, and I know my time's running out. All right. So let's talk about a little state. So here's where we are, EVs by the numbers. We do have a quarterly report we post on pluginaustin.com. Here's some of the latest numbers. We have 26,000 EVs registered in Austin. We do have a buyer's guide that is going nuts. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Tesla is a very powerful brand here in Austin, and you can just kind of see the growth has just been nuts on EVs, and this is by model type. So if you look at the emissions, and whether national emissions or this is Austin's emissions, there's two gorillas you got to address. Energy in buildings, mostly electricity, transportation. So I like how my friends at the climate office stay business as usual. So historical, it's not business as usual, guys. It's really hard but all these savings you're seeing here from this peak is what Austin Energy is doing to bringing more and more carbon-free generation, a lot more wind and solar onto our resource mix. But if we don't do nothing, the transportation is not going to go anywhere. So what are we doing? So a public document, Austin Climate Equity Plan. Anyone here work on that plan? We had over 300 participants in the transportation electrification. Do I have any participants in here? We have a few. I was the co-chair of this particular working group. And the three major goals from there is by 2030, we want to see 40% of all vehicle miles traveled to be on the electric platform. That one goal would remove 18% of the emissions from Austin. Not 18% from trans, 18% total. There's nothing else in the entire plan to scale that really is going to move the needle that isn't already being done through the decarbonization of electricity. But also metrics on equity and thought leadership. So I'm going to close on our strategy to get us to that 40 VMT. And what I found when I talked to a lot of utilities and cities, they focus on one of these areas. But what we found is by having a wide net, if you will, there's a synergy between the strategies. So this is something the teams developed called the 5 EV pillar strategy. So it's about charging infrastructure, which most utilities get, but it's also about how you're addressing equity and affordability, how you're enabling fleets, what are you doing with outreach, and then grid integration. So I'm gonna give some quick project updates on what we're doing here. So let's talk about charging infrastructure. One I think is important to note, 84% of all charging happens at home today. So when people talk about DC fast and public level 2, we manage over 1,300 charging ports. That is just really a fraction. Now, part of it is also technologies to allow more multifamily, but you look where vehicles are parked, that's where charging happens. So it's really about home, and a big chart of even that public infrastructure is workplace. There was one study that looked at how much a car is actually used. How much percentage of the car from used 1% to 99% of the time, what number do you think your car is actually being used? You want to take a guess? 3%, 4%, 5%. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's the most inefficient major purchase you do as a consumer. This study showed up to 5%, so 95% of the time it wasn't being used, and 1% of that 5% was, quote, looking for parking. So it really is just something. So if you want to know where to naturally put infrastructure, you look at where that car is naturally parked 95% of the time, home and work. But there's also a case on public when we do that. Another thing where I push back in the industry as a utility guy, faster is not always better. we have the OEMs and we have car manufacturers. You know, when DC Fast first came out, 50 kW was fast. And then 125 kW, 150 is the new normal. And now you're having Porsche saying, well, let's go to 350 kW, because you know what's better than 150 is 350 kW. To put 350 kW in perspective, I can either charge 2 Porsches at 350 kW each, so they can go to Marfa, or we can support a 100,000 square foot Target big box store and all the jobs and everything. That's about the equivalent of power needs. So if resources aren't limited, sure, faster is better, but it's not. If you have constraints and you believe in affordability and tying into when wind is naturally blowing and all these other things, you want to right size. So there's a case for still the number one way people charge in Austin today is 1 kW, almost evenly balanced with a home 6 kW, home level 2. We have a great rebate for home level 2. We're not against it. 6 times as fast. And they look at DC Fast, but big different levels in cost, not only cost to deploy the infrastructure, but cost to provision electricity. Green Building Program has incorporated EV readiness for new construction to make it much easier to deploy EV stations. This is just a list of the amount of incentives and rebates. So if you're thinking about buying an EV, go to pluginaustin.com, look at the level 2 rebate. Or if you're thinking about an electric bike, we do have an electric bike rebate as well. Although I'm gonna kind of give you an insider information. Hold off on it if possible. Our plan is to revamp the electric bike rebate program to be effective January 1. So we'll probably announce it in 2. Wait, John, you're clapping on that? Go, John, go ahead and start a clap on that. That's what we call the hot take. So we will announce it in a couple weeks. We still have to get to the final approvals, submit it to council, all that kind of stuff. But we've been tasked to let's go bigger and bolder on the electric bike. It's still a great rebate, but I think y'all really going to be impressed on that. So take a look when we post that. Equity, affordability. So in addition to a talented musician, Amy actually is also our senior lead on transportation electrification equity. So she manages a lot of these programs and has fantastic contacts in the community to help drive these programs. So everything from e-bike infrastructure with affordable housing units demonstrated here. A fantastic EVs for Schools program. It back in the day launched in 4 schools. We didn't have much of a clue of how much demand there was. It's now in 140 Central Texas schools and growing. So we just really pleased. This is just to give education to our future leaders. And we launched it in 4 Title I schools. So majority of population are kids from low income. So we're trying to change the narrative. And also when parents are making that buying decision, talking about the car, the kids, well, you want to know what I learned in class today. Let's talk about fleets. Here's where I talked about, so the city of Austin's own fleet electrification. This is their slide, so I did not edit it. I think we have a city fleet person here, terrible. But what this is telling us is we're ahead of the savings plan. When we originally launched this plan, we thought we'd save the city $3.5 million in 10 years. We're now on track to save the city $3.5 million in about 8.5 years. And by the time we get to 10 years, it'll be almost double that, $7 million in savings by our own fleet electrification. So thanks. I told you it ends up. So it's not a trade-off between saving green or going green. You can really do both, especially if you look at it from a fleet perspective. Fleets look at total cost of ownership. Consumers look at MSRP. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Cap Metro is committed to go 100% electrification in their own bus fleet. So they have 12 right now. They plan by the end of 2023 to have 70 in service, to include 2 of their bus rapid transit lines, Pleasant Valley Metro and Expo Central Metro, to be fully electric. So in addition to the 200 e-bus depot here that you see phase 1 finished on your screen, that will also be en route charging for the rapid transit lines. So some very cool technology there, and kudos to our friends at Cap Metro. Recently, Austin ISD, for our own kids, committed to completely convert their diesel buses to 100% electric. So very exciting. Great business case. Affordability for the school district is already there. They're taking away those diesel fumes from the kids is there. It's just a fantastic business case. Once again, I'm going to thank my own team member to help collaborate that. Amy She brought in bus demos for the school districts to include here, to include working with them, helping them fill out stuff for how the grants work, and has just really been a great consultant and advocate to the school district to help guide them along. Outreach, this is an example of an outreach event. Who all got one of the new t-shirts? So this is what you look like now when you put on the t-shirt. Not bad marketing. You can be a cool kid too. Love Stevie is our social media campaign. The Stevie educational videos in aggregate over 1 million views. Very good. I have a question. So last year there was an inaugural event called Electrify Expo at Circuit of the Americas. Pay to park, pay to get in. It wasn't a concert or anything. It was to ride and drive for e-bikes and EVs. First of all, did anyone go to that in here? All right, not bad. How many people do you think showed up to that event? 500. Oh, a couple thousand? Any other guesses? Wow. 21,150 people. So if you don't think there's interest in ride and drive and kicking the tires of EVs, I would defer you to this number right here. So out of that, over 4,000 folks did an EV demo and over 12,000 e-bike and scooters. And then we have our producer, our AE producer of night, Bobby Gotzi, who set all this up from a team perspective as they're speaking to the press about how awesome EVs are. You're invited. You missed the show last time. It's all right. I hooked you up with a discount code. So next what? Well, Bobby wants us to come November 12th, 13th. So 12th and 13th is the ride and drive event, and there's an industry day on that Friday as well. If you actually go to the website, if that's more of interest in more having the presentation as well, or just the ride and drive. And if you use Electrify Expo, Austin Energy 20, EEAE 20, you can get another sweet 20% off, and the tickets aren't that much, not too bad. One of the things that we found is the biggest barrier to consumer adoption is the experience or lack thereof at traditional dealerships. It's kind of known issues. That's why ride and drives like electric is so important. It allows people to skip that layer of the traditional dealership and go straight to the manufacturer doing the ride and drive. And then they go back empowered and saying, yeah, no, I know what I want. Also, we have established the Austin Energy EV Buyer's Guide. So if you go to ev.austinenergy.com, you can see all the EVs in the market and specifically the real-time inventory of over 20 dealerships in Austin, new and used. So if I go, I just checked it a couple days ago, there are several used EVs for under $10,000. And here's the VIN, here's the color, here's a lot, just come down and pick it up. You can even just email them, say, just have it ready for me. I want this $9,000 EV waiting for me. So that is one way we're trying to push the narrative and improve the customer experience with the Buyer's Guide. You might have been to a car dealership where you see these big kiosks. This is part of the Austin Energy EV Buyer's Guide. In-store displays for both customers as well as staff to kind of train themselves up what's going on. And we do notice the marketing has been very great pushing people to the Buyer's Guide. Since inception, over 500,000 unique visitors have visited the guide. We were getting 10,000 unique visitors a month, which is just kind of insane what we're thinking. To a market that's registering 1,000 EVs a month, that we're pushing a sales funnel of 10 unique visitors per month. And then more recently, we're seeing some days over 1,000 unique visitors in a single day. So it's hot. Pick up your EV, check out the EV Buyer's Guide. All right, we're going to end on grid integration and wrap it up. So one thing is, so I do want to compare, I bashed on crypto, but what about EVs? Well, one is there is a society value, and I just let y'all crowdsource that. Everything from clean air and affordability, we're displacing gas, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also a different load. If you look at the projections on ERCOT, same thing. We expect high projections on the left, but you also look at the time of day it charges is important. So you don't see a lot during our peak time. We build a lot of inventory in peak. You see a lot of energy being sucked up just at night, where we do have that overcapacity of wind, where we do have less congestion on the network. That's where these EVs naturally are going to charge. Where if I were to put the line on a cryptocurrency, not to beat them, I'll just end on that. What would that line look like? Yeah, flat. 24/7, 365 board, roll dice, roll dice, roll dice, roll dice. They're not like, oh, I'm plugging in, I go to sleep, whatever. No, it's to them to make money. they have to be at the maximum RPMs 24/7, 365, unless you're willing to sweeten the kitty a little bit and pay them. But even with that said, the market can already adjust. So how ERCOT works, I'm dipping back crypto, I just can't help it. The market has a 15-minute intervals and typically sells around $22 a megawatt hour. The strike price, from several people I've talked to, they think it's around $240 is what the value of a megawatt hour can be for this crypto mining to still make money. But after that, they're going to shed automatically because then they're underwater. But the fact, so they would automatically shed off because the market is going to go, market can rise all the way up to $9,000 on the storm area. So something that costs $20 on one day can be $9,000 another day. And Jay is watching me on the left. So we think there's already market conditions that would shed them based on we have this competitive market, let the market decide. But I mean, why wouldn't you double dip for your 9.2 million? All right. Once again, it's not more buildings. Also, people are much more willing to kind of participate in these programs, less opt-out than our traditional demand response program, air conditioning. We do have assets deployed during Austin Shines, which is the integration of PV, solar, and stationary grid batteries, as well as a vehicle to grid. And in conclusion, I'm very optimistic. I know I did a little bashing up there, but I think through technology and innovation and decarbonization, decentralization and automation, we do have a very bright future in electricity. I think it's an ecosystem of both technology, innovation, consumer behavior, and smart policy all working together, and I think we can get there. So I want to thank you much for holding in there, and this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go into Q&A now. And Karl already credited her multiple times during the presentation. Please give a round of applause for our opening talent and the EV program lead that Karl referenced, Amy Ashley. So Amy is going to do the Q&A tonight. And if you're looking at your watches, yes, we went a little bit over, but we did it because we had a little bit of a time getting things started and whatnot. So I think we're right on really the right track, just offset by several minutes. Not bad at all. We're going to still finish in here before 8 p.m. And then if you want, join us over at BD Riley's for a drink after this. So Amy is going to ask questions. You've submitted them. If you've submitted them to the event questions channel, she'll select from that set, and she's going to save one for a South by Southwest badge. So Amy, take it away.
And Jay, did I hear you're picking up the first drink at BD Riley's?
Yes, and I did that when the RSVP total was about 50. It's 181 in the room now. So y'all be gentle on me. Be gentle.
It's kind of like the t-shirt, the first 50 people that show up.
Just a little housekeeping reminder too, if you do travel over to BD Riley's and you stay a little late, please don't leave your car past 8 o'clock over here. You can find street parking. There's also parking right next to BD Riley's behind the Alamo. So please do that because you won't be able to get out. There's going to be a gate that'll close. Okay.
What time, Amy?
So there were some wonderful questions. Huh?
How many?
There's a ton of questions, and I'm kind of looking at some themes.
Well, I'm sorry, but we were running out of time, Amy.
Okay, here I go. So we're going to ask this first
And
question.
who picks the top question for the South by Southwest badge?
I do.
Amy picks. So
do.
if you are in the audience and you have, and Amy loves your question, a South by Southwest badge, not a bad deal. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. So the first question is, how does Austin plan to electrify our traffic grid? What kind of training will be needed, and how many jobs could this create?
Well, we talked about jobs earlier. The national figure is 26% of increase in EV specific jobs. And then I think John said here in Austin, it's, what was the number you used, John? 20,000%? Well, because of the Gigafactory. So I think there's a lot of jobs in the ecosystem. We work with our partners at Austin Transportation Department, who is working on some very interesting technologies as well. We're in a discovery pilot with a inductive charging company. So it's just you park over a pad, but at some point they want to commercialize strips and roads. So I say the future is bright. There's a lot of jobs in the clean tech industry, and Austin, without a doubt, is a major EV hub.
So what I'm doing is consolidating a lot of these questions, and this one is by Hatfield. I'm sorry if I'm not getting your name correct. How is AE preparing the local grid for the electrification movement?
Yeah, so there's some things I think we're doing very good and some things where I think we need to improve. I work with amazing people in our power system engineers and design staff. And when we look at our reliability numbers on national averages, we're very hard to beat. We really are. I mean, you might have your own thing, but when you look at metrics, which are called SAIDI and SAFE, we have a very strong, robust, what's called a diamond grade grid here. So I have a lot of confidence here. Where I think we can do better is I think the time to deployment is slowing down. We're seeing that across the city, just not in electrical work, but general construction, because we have to pull permits like everyone else. And I'm seeing the lead times getting longer and longer. That is a question during a recent all hands. I think in this room right here, I pitched to our general manager and CEO, what are we doing about the lead times? Because we are getting some feedback of organizations wanting to put in new infrastructure or robo-taxis or certain things, and we're all excited about, let's get it done. And then we move through the intake system, it's a bit of a slog. So there's a lot of things that we are doing with it, everything from external contractors, reviewing our engineer pay grades across the city, see if we can be a little more competitive, across the board to do better, but I think that's something we can do better.
Great. Okay, so from David O'Shell, can you provide an outlook on innovation and battery technologies that might become available to the market in the near to midterm?
So I do think in the future of electricity, we will see a doubling of the energy density per weight. Because it's all about weight per energy density. You're having very credible people like one of the inventors of the lithium ion battery, Nobel Prize winner and local icon, Dr. Goodenough, who said his team is getting pretty close to doing that, as well as other research and other very credible organizations. So to keep in perspective, think of all the changes in the internal combustion engine since the Model T to today. We're going to see that same kind of innovation in kind of batteries and EVs today. So we're going to still have several leapfrogs of technology. And so I think we'll see some major changes there. We're already seeing changes in the composition of batteries to take into effect how you mine and where you mine and cost. So you're looking at the precious metals, and instead of being a three-part, you might be a 6-part and 2-part in different chemistries. So there's just a lot of not only just innovation, but solid engineering being done. So I'm very optimistic. We haven't seen nothing yet when it comes to batteries.
Okay, this is from Steve Krant, and not to open up a can of worms, but we had a lot of questions around ERCOT. Is ERCOT the problem or part of the solution? And why doesn't Texas connect to the national power grid?
ERCOT's definitely part of the solution. There is very smart, very capable, very motivated people there. I think there's some just policy dynamics that could help maybe them do a better job. But at the end of the day, ERCOT's the referee. So they're not the player. They can kind of tell the player this, and they're not the owner. The owner is the legislature telling them how the rules work. They're just the ref. So if you understand their role as the ref and what their capabilities are, I think they're doing an amazing job for what they have to do. And did I answer the question? Okay, great. Anyone here from ERCOT?
We're all in this together. How's that?
We're all in this together. And even prior to coming out here today, I talked to a buddy of mine at ERCOT and ran some of the thoughts I had, through him and get his insight. I just don't work in a bubble. I talk to a lot of people in the ecosystem consistently, even some of the public utility commissioners who listed there on their 20 reasons. I've had one-on-one discussions with that. I mean, it is an ecosystem. You start knowing everyone and you start to understand a feel for kind of their role, and we all have our role and responsibility and lane, and we all have our challenges. I would just imagine just like you do in your job and your industry. Unfortunately, it's not all roses and rainbows, but I do love my job. It's nice.
Jay, how are we doing? 3 more, one of them being all right.
And what we just established there, Amy's ERCOT, he's the legislature. Jay, what can we, 3 more. Yes, sir. And then she's now going to enforce that rules. That is the rules. But she gets to choose the winner. That is correct.
All right, Karl. So
South by badge. Can I submit my own question, Amy?
Just a moment. All right, Carl, again, not to put you on the spot, this is another one of those questions that I think that you have an answer to help shed some light on. How will the price increase after the rate case affect renewables and decentralization systems?
How will the prices increase?
How will that affect renewables, or will it?
I'm sorry, is talking about the utility price to customers or just the overall
rate-
market price of renewables?
The rate case, the rate change.
The rate case, yes. And Amy, we need to have a pre-brief since you're cherry picking the questions about what it's like. I know you're gonna, we're throwing you under the bus, Carl. No, let's talk about
Burning
the rate case.
questions, Carl.
So there's two major kind of components of how rate cases work or pass-throughs. So recently we did have to announce an increase in the pass-through. The pass-through is fees we're directly charged by ERCOT, transmission congestion and other fees, and it's a one-for-one translation ultimately to the customer. And that's what we talked about, that 9.2 million. Where do you think that eventually comes down to? So potentially that could be part of that new ERCOT fee we're passing along all to y'all, theoretically. I don't know how the mechanics of that particular system is. So we did have to recently announce that. Then there's a power system adjustment. Now, one thing we did do, so we are now also recovering the power adjustment. We did, working with Console, instead of immediately getting what we need to be made whole, if you will, we're slowly phasing that in. And another reason why the gap's a little bit bigger, remember when I put on the board here during the storm, our generation produced better than market? We actually lowered our PSA to give the money back to the customers that was made during the storm. So it isn't like pocket and go in the ether. So then that made the gap bigger. So now when we have all these new fees coming from ERCOT, and gas is through the roof. Natural gas is more expensive now than any time since 2008. And so that is why the power system adjustment goes up, is because the gas rates are so high. But even with all that said, it's a very transparent process. It's kind of a long process. It negotiates price down. Like, I can't remember the last time OPEC asked me, hey, can you weigh in? We're thinking about raising oil a little bit. And, so it's one of the most kind of transparent processes of energy that I can think of is electric and electric rates. And that's another reason why I like being in public service and being for a city-owned utility.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. So we are going to move to the last question. Is Kristen Pilsner here, or is she online?
Is this the winning question?
This is the winning question.
You get a South by Southwest back. We already knew it was from you. Check under your chair. It's taped to the bottom of your chair, ma'am.
And I love this question, but it also was the most liked. So I think I'm not alone in this decision. I was wondering how electric vehicles will be made more accessible to lower income communities. How can it be more appealing and attainable as a possibility for all of our citizens?
That is my favorite question. That is an award-winning South by Southwest bad winning question. And for the answer, I'm going to defer to our senior EV equity lead, Amy Ashley.
Thank you, Karl. Okay, great. Well, one of the things that we do to start at the very bottom is, thanks, Karl, is we're working on the education piece. We really feel that outreach with education, not only with our young students, but also just with our community in general, because we know that if we're trying to get the community to buy electric, go electric, that they're going to have to buy into it. They're going to have to really buy into that technology. And if we're not out discussing and having outreach, then we're not being able to help shift behaviors. And that really is what it's all about. And I'll say the other thing that we're doing as a city that helps is that we're leading by example. And Karl talked a little bit about our fleet. We're transitioning our fleet. If we were going to ask you, our citizens, to go electric, let's see the city doing that too. You're seeing it with Cap Metro and now our school buses. So I think just those behavior shifts are really super important, but it also is getting out in the community, like with the climate equity plan, which has a heavy transportation electrification component, getting out there and taking feedback from the community, getting the voice of the people to chime in and help us influence our design in these programs so that we can really reach people where they are. That's what I got.